The Mercy's light drifted through the void between stars, her white hull gleaming with the crimson crosses that marked her as a hospital ship. Captain Elena Ross stood on the bridge, watching the star field through the viewport as her crew tended to the wounded from a dozen different species. The ship's corridors hummed with activity as human medics worked alongside alien doctors, their shared mission transcending the boundaries of race and homeworld. "Captain," called Lieutenant Mark Vale from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority distress signal from the Kepler-7 mining colony. They're reporting heavy casualties and requesting immediate medical assistance." Elena turned from the viewport, her weathered face creased with concern. The Kepler-7 colony was deep in contested space, where the ongoing war between the Galactic Coalition and the Keth Dominion had left countless worlds caught in the crossfire. "How far out are we?" 18 hours at maximum burn, Vale replied, his fingers dancing across the console. "The signal's weak, but I'm picking up multiple species among the casualties. Looks like they had miners from at least 6 different worlds working there." Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's chief medical officer, stepped onto the bridge from the medical bay. Her surgical scrubs were stained with the blue blood of a Centauri patient she'd just finished treating. "Captain, we're at near capacity already. We've got wounded from the Proxima engagement filling most of our beds." Elena nodded grimly. The Mercy's light was one of only 3 hospital ships operating in this sector, and the demand for medical aid far outstripped their ability to provide it. But that was the burden they carried as members of the Terran Medical Corps, to serve all sentient life, regardless of species or allegiance. "We'll make room," Elena decided. "Set course for Kepler-7, maximum burn. And send word to the medical staff to prepare for mass casualties." As the ship's engines roared to life, Elena couldn't help but think about the sacred nature of their mission. Every species in the galaxy recognized the inviolable nature of hospital ships. The white hull with its red crosses was more than just paint. It was a symbol of hope, of sanctuary, of the universal commitment to preserve life even in the midst of war. The journey to Kepler-7 passed in a blur of preparation. Medical teams readied operating theaters, organized supply inventories, and prepared temporary treatment areas in the ship's cargo bays. The wounded already aboard were transferred to more compact accommodations to make room for the incoming casualties. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-Fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY, battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring these front lines to you. As they dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler-7, the scene that greeted them was one of devastation. The mining colony's orbital platforms were twisted wreckage, and the planet's surface showed the characteristic scorch marks of orbital bombardment. But life signs were still registering from the underground shelters. "Take us into standard orbit," Elena ordered. "Launch the medical shuttles as soon as we're in position." The rescue operation began immediately. Shuttles descended to the planet's surface, their crews working tirelessly to evacuate the wounded. Among the survivors were humans, Centauri, Vorthan, and even a few Keth civilians who had been working in the mines when the attack began. The Mercy's light welcomed them all with equal compassion. Dr. Kim worked without rest, moving between patients with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent years in war zones. The ship's medical bay became a symphony of controlled chaos as species-specific medical equipment hummed and beeped, monitoring vital signs in creatures whose biology spanned the breadth of known space. "We've got a critical case coming up from the surface," reported Chief Nurse Tom Anders over the intercom. "Centauri female, massive internal bleeding from shrapnel wounds. She's lost a lot of blood, but she's fighting." Elena watched from the bridge as another shuttle docked with the ship. The dedication of her crew never ceased to amaze her. They had signed up for this mission, knowing the risks, understanding that their commitment to healing would often place them in harm's way. But they persevered because they believed in something greater than themselves, the fundamental value of all sentient life. The evacuation continued through the night cycle, with medical teams working in shifts to ensure continuous care for the mounting casualties. The Mercy's light was living up to her name, bringing hope to those who had none. The rescue operation had been proceeding smoothly for nearly 12 hours when Lieutenant Vale's console erupted in urgent warnings. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures emerging from the system's edge. Configuration matches. Keth Dominion warships." Elena felt her blood run cold. The Keth Dominion was known for their aggressive expansion and brutal tactics, but even they had always respected the sanctity of medical vessels. "How many ships?" "7 vessels, Captain. 3 heavy cruisers and 4 destroyers. They're on an intercept course." Dr. Kim's voice crackled over the intercom from the medical bay. "Captain, we've still got 2 shuttles on the surface and we're in the middle of critical surgeries. We need more time." Elena's mind raced through the possibilities. The Mercies. Light was clearly marked as a hospital ship, broadcasting medical identification codes on all frequencies. No military force in the galaxy would attack a vessel engaged in humanitarian operations. It was the one universal law that bound all species together in the midst of their conflicts. "Open a channel to the Keth ships," Elena ordered. "This is Captain Elena Ross of the Terran hospital ship, Mercy's Light. We are conducting medical evacuation operations under the protection of galactic humanitarian law. Please acknowledge." The response came in the harsh, guttural language of the Keth, translated by the ship's computers. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Keth territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "Transmit our medical credentials again," Elena commanded. "Full spectrum broadcast. Make sure they can see exactly what we are." The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. In the medical bay below, human and alien doctors continued their work, unaware of the drama unfolding in the void above them. The Mercy's Light hung in space, her white hull blazing with the universal symbol of medical aid. Then the impossible happened. The lid. Keth cruiser opened fire. The first plasma bolt struck the ship's port side, sending shockwaves through the entire vessel. Emergency alarms blared as the lights flickered and the artificial gravity fluctuated. Elena was thrown against her command chair as the ship shuddered under the impact. "Shields are down to 60%, Vale shouted over the chaos. "There, targeting our medical bays." Another barrage struck the ship, this time aimed directly at the section housing the critical care units. The Mercy's Light had no weapons, no defenses beyond her shields, and the universal respect for medical vessels. She was never meant to fight. All hands braced for emergency maneuvers. Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the terror in her heart. "Get those shuttles back aboard now." The ship's pilot, Commander Jake Morrison, threw the Mercy's Light into evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible for a military vessel of her size. But Morrison was one of the finest pilots in the Terran fleet, and he knew that the lives of hundreds of patients depended on his skill. Dr. Kim's voice came over the intercom, tight with controlled panic. "Captain, I've got patients in the middle of surgery. These maneuvers are going to kill them." Elena's heart tore as she faced the impossible choice. Hold steady and let the Keth destroy them all, or continue evasive action and watch her patients die from the very movements meant to save them. "Medical teams, secure your patients as best you can," she ordered. "We're going to get through this." The Keth ships pressed their attack with ruthless efficiency. They had broken the most sacred law of galactic civilization, and they seemed determined to leave no witnesses. Plasma bolts rained down on the defenseless hospital ship as Elena watched her crew fight desperately to save lives even as death rained down upon them. In the medical bay, Chief Nurse Anders worked frantically to stabilize a Vorthan child whose life support had been damaged in the attack. Around him, other medical staff performed miracles of improvisation, using emergency power cells and portable equipment to keep their patients alive. "One shuttle is aboard," Morrison reported. "The other is damaged but functional. They're requesting permission to attempt landing." "Bring them home," Elena said quietly. The final shuttle limped into the docking bay just as another plasma barrage struck the ship's stern. The Mercy's Light shuddered and rolled, her hull breached in multiple places. But still, the medical teams worked on as the Keth ships closed in for the killing blow. Elena stood on her bridge and watched the stars wheel by. They had done everything they could. They had saved lives, honored their oath, and shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. The Mercy's Light would not survive this day, but her mission would live on forever. The emergency beacon of the Mercies. Light transmitted for 6 minutes and 47 seconds before the Kef plasma cannons finally silenced it forever. But those 6 minutes and 47 seconds were enough to carry the unthinkable news. Across the galaxy at the speed of light, on Terra, Admiral James Fletcher stood in the Situation Room of Fleet Command, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the tactical display table. The holographic replay of the attack showed the Mercy's light dying slowly, her medical bays still glowing with activity, even as Kef warships poured fire into her defenseless hull. "Confirmed casualties?" Fletcher asked, his voice barely above. A whisper. 237 souls, reported his aide, Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos. 112 humans, 125 of various coalition species. Captain Ross transmitted the final crew manifest just before. She couldn't finish the sentence. Fletcher had known Elena Ross for 20 years. They had served together during the Frontier Wars, and he had personally recommended her for command of the Mercy's Light. She had been the finest officer he had ever served with. And now she was gone, murdered while performing the most sacred duty in the galaxy. "Sir," Santos continued, "we're receiving similar reports from across human space. The news is spreading through the colonies like wildfire. The civilian population is furious," Fletcher finished, "as they should be." On New Geneva, the colonial parliament erupted in angry shouts as the news broke. Representative Lisa Chun stood at the podium, her voice rising above the chaos. "They attacked a hospital ship. They murdered doctors and nurses who were trying to save lives." Similar scenes played out across the Terran Federation. On Mars, dock workers walked off their jobs in protest. On Proxima Centauri, the colonial militia began mobilizing without waiting for official orders. The attack on the Mercy's Light had struck at the very heart of human identity, their commitment to preserving life and protecting the innocent. But the outrage wasn't limited to human space. In the Centauri Assembly, Elder Coordinator Vex announced that their species was formally severing all diplomatic ties with the Kef Dominion. The Vorthan Republic followed suit within hours, their spokesperson declaring that the attack represented a crime against all sentient life. The galactic media networks carried the story to every corner of known space. Footage of the Mercy's Light under attack was broadcast on 1,000 worlds, showing the white-hulled hospital ship desperately trying to protect her patients as Kef warships systematically destroyed her. On the Kef homeworld of Nexus Prime, Dominion Chancellor Krex dismissed the outrage as coalition propaganda. In a statement broadcast from the Great Hall, he declared that the Mercy's Light had been operating illegally in Kef space and had ignored orders to withdraw. "The humans chose to defy our sovereignty," Krex announced, his forearms spread wide, in a gesture of defiance. "The consequences of their actions are their own responsibility." But even as Krex spoke, intelligence reports were flowing into human space that painted a very different picture. The attack had been planned, coordinated, and executed with military precision. The Kef had deliberately targeted a hospital ship. Knowing exactly what they were doing, Admiral Fletcher stood before the assembled Joint Chiefs, his face grim with determination. "The Kef Dominion has committed an act of war against the Terran Federation and a crime against all sentient life. We cannot let this stand." General Patricia Hayes, head of the Terran Marine Corps, leaned forward in her chair. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" "Complete military response," Fletcher replied. "We mobilize everything we have. Every ship, every regiment, every resource at our disposal. The Kef want to see what happens when you attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. We're going to show them." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Terran Federation had been content to fight a defensive war, protecting coalition worlds from Kef aggression while seeking diplomatic solutions. But the attack on the Mercy's Light had changed everything. "The galaxy needs to understand," Fletcher continued, "that there are lines that cannot be crossed. The Kef have crossed that line, and now they're going to face the consequences." In the communication centers of 100 human worlds, the call went out. Reserve units were activated, shipyards were placed on emergency production schedules, and the vast industrial might of human civilization began to turn toward a single purpose: justice for the Mercy's Light. The Keth Dominion had awakened something terrible in humanity. They had struck at the very heart of what made humans human, their dedication to healing, their protection of the innocent, their belief that all life was sacred. Now they would learn why humans were classified as Deathworlders, why their homeworld was considered too dangerous for most species to visit. The attack on the Mercies. Light had been intended to show human weakness. Instead, it had revealed human strength. And across the galaxy, both friend and foe began to understand that the humans were no longer content to simply defend. They were coming for the Keth Dominion, and nothing in the galaxy would stop them. The Terran Federation's response came 72 hours after the destruction of the Mercy's light, and it came with a fury that shook the foundations of galactic civilization. Operation Hippocrates, named after the ancient human physician whose oath demanded, first, do no harm, launched simultaneously across 17 different star systems. Admiral Fletcher stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Retribution, watching as the largest human fleet ever assembled dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Keth home system. 347 warships spread across the void like an angry swarm, their weapons already powering up for what would become known as the Reckoning. All stations report ready, Admiral, announced Captain Davis from the Weapons Control Center. The fleet is in position. Fletcher opened a channel to the Keth homeworld. This is Admiral Fletcher of the Terran Federation. You attacked and destroyed a hospital ship engaged in humanitarian operations. You murdered doctors, nurses, and patients who posed no threat to your empire. By the laws of galactic civilization, you have committed a war crime of the highest order. The response came from Chancellor Krex himself, his voice filled with arrogant dismissal. Your threats mean nothing, human. We are the Keth Dominion. We bow to no one, especially not to Deathworlders who hide behind medical vessels. You want to see what Deathworlders can do? Fletcher replied quietly, you're about to find out. All ships, commence Operation Hippocrates. Show them what happens when you attack our healers. The human fleet struck with surgical precision that would have made the doctors of the Mercy's light proud. Keth orbital defenses, built over centuries and considered impregnable, were systematically dismantled within hours. The humans had studied every aspect of Keth military technology, and they exploited every weakness with ruthless efficiency. Captain Lisa Wong of the cruiser Nightingale watched as her ship's railguns tore through a Keth defense platform. Target destroyed. Moving to next objective. The Nightingale was one of 12 ships named after medical pioneers, each one carrying the names of those who had died aboard the Mercy's light. They fought with a dedication that bordered on religious fervor, their crews driven by the memory of their fallen comrades. On the surface of Nexus Prime, Chancellor Krex watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically destroyed by human forces. The Keth had always prided themselves on their military might, but they had never faced an enemy like this. The humans fought with a coordination and intensity that seemed almost supernatural. How are they doing this? Krex demanded of his military advisors. Our ships are being destroyed faster than they can respond. General Thok, the Keth Supreme Military Commander, could only shake his head in disbelief. They're using tactics we've never seen before. Every move they make is calculated to maximize casualties, while minimizing their own losses. It's as if they can predict our every action. What the Keth couldn't understand was that this was how humans fought when their core values were threatened. The same species that had produced the compassionate doctors of the Mercy's light had also produced the most efficient military force in the galaxy. Human warfare was characterized by innovation, adaptation, and an almost frightening ability to learn from their enemies. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Keth Dominion's military power had been effectively destroyed. But the humans weren't finished. Across Keth space, human forces struck at every major military installation, every government facility, every symbol of dominion. Power. They moved with the precision of a surgical strike, targeting only military assets while carefully avoiding civilian casualties. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. Dr. Michael Park, serving aboard the medical ship Caduceus, watched as wounded Keth soldiers were brought aboard his vessel. Despite everything their species had done, the humans still offered medical aid to their enemies. It was a gesture that stunned the Keth prisoners, who had expected nothing but brutality from the Deathworlders. "Why do you help us?" asked one wounded Keth officer, his translator struggling with the concept of mercy toward enemies. Dr. Park looked up from his work, his hands steady as he treated the alien's wounds. "Because this is what we do. We heal, we preserve life. It's what the crew of the Mercy's Light died for, and it's what we're fighting to protect." The Keth officer stared at him with something approaching wonder. His species had been taught that humans were savage Deathworlders, driven by primitive emotions and bloodlust. But here was a human doctor, treating his wounds with the same care he would show to his own people. As news of the human victory spread across the galaxy, other species began to understand what they had witnessed. The humans hadn't just won a military victory, they had demonstrated the true meaning of civilization. They had shown that strength and compassion could coexist, that the same species capable of devastating warfare could also embody the highest ideals of medical care. The Centauri Elder Coordinator Vex issued a statement that would be remembered for generations. "Today we have seen the true face of humanity. They are indeed Deathworlders, but their deadly power serves life, not death. They are the guardians of the innocent, the protectors of the weak, and the enemies of those who would harm the defenseless." On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Fletcher watched as the last Keth military installations surrendered. The Dominion's ability to wage war had been completely destroyed, but the humans had achieved their victory while maintaining their principles. "Signal the fleet," Fletcher ordered. "Begin humanitarian operations. The Keth civilian population will need medical aid and food supplies. We're going to show them what real civilization looks like." The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. Because when you strike at the healers, you face the full wrath of those who value life above all else. 6 months after the fall of the Keth Dominion, the galaxy had settled into a new reality. The Terran Federation had not annexed Keth space, nor had they sought to rule over the conquered territory. Instead, they had done something unprecedented. In galactic history, they had rebuilt their enemy. Ambassador Elena Martinez stood in the rebuilt medical center on Nexus Prime, watching as human and Keth doctors worked side by side to treat patients. The facility had been constructed on the exact site where Chancellor Krex's palace had once stood, a symbol of the new order that had emerged from the ashes of the old. "Dr. Thek," she called to one of the Keth physicians, "how are the integration protocols working?" The young Keth doctor looked up from his patient, his 4 arms moving with the precise gestures that his species used to express gratitude. "Better than we had hoped, Ambassador. The human medical techniques are revolutionary. We have learned so much about preserving life rather than simply extending it." It was a transformation that had shocked the galaxy. The Keth, once known for their warrior culture and aggressive expansion, had embraced medicine and healing with the same intensity they had once applied to warfare. The attack on the Mercy's Light had inadvertently created a new generation of Keth who understood the value of life. In the Galactic Council chambers on Centauri Station, the delegates from 57 species gathered to formally ratify the Medical Vessel Protection Act. The legislation, proposed by the Terran Federation and unanimously supported by every member species, established ironclad protections for hospital ships and medical personnel. "Let it be recorded," announced Council Speaker Vorin of the Altarian Republic, "that this act is named in honor of those who died aboard the Mercy's Light. Their sacrifice has given us laws that will protect healers throughout the galaxy." The act did more than just establish legal protections. It created a new galactic institution, the Medical Corps, a joint organization of healers from all species, trained and equipped to respond to humanitarian crises anywhere in known space. The Corps was headquartered on Terra, and its ships bore the same white hulls and red crosses that had marked the Mercy's Light. Admiral Fletcher, now serving as director of the Medical Corps, stood before the assembled graduates of the first interspecies medical training program. Human doctors stood alongside Centauri healers, Vorthan medics, and even former Keth warriors who had chosen to dedicate their lives to preserving rather than taking life. "You are the living legacy of the Mercy's Light," Fletcher told them. "You carry with you the responsibility to heal, to protect, and to ensure that what happened to Captain Ross and her crew never happens again." Among the graduates was Dr. Kex, a young Keth who had been present during the human invasion of Nexus Prime. He had watched human doctors treat wounded Keth soldiers with the same care they showed their own people, and the experience had changed his life forever. "I pledge to honor the memory of those who died aboard the Mercy's Light," Dr. Keck said, his words translated for the mixed audience. "I pledge to heal the wounded, comfort the dying, and protect the innocent, regardless of their species or homeworld." The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings who had come to understand that the humans had given them something precious, a new definition of strength. True power, they had learned, was not the ability to destroy, but the courage to heal. On Terra, in the memorial garden dedicated to the crew of the Mercy's Light, Captain Elena Ross's name was carved in stone alongside those of her crew. The inscription below read, "They died as they lived in service to life." The garden had become a pilgrimage site for beings from across the galaxy. Keth parents brought their children to teach them about the price of hatred. Zentari philosophers came to meditate on the meaning of sacrifice. Human medical students took their oaths while standing before the memorial, promising to uphold the values that had cost so much to defend. As the years passed, the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had anticipated. The example of the Mercy's Light had inspired a new generation of healers, diplomats, and leaders who understood that true civilization was measured not by military might, but by the care shown to the vulnerable. The Keth Dominion was gone, replaced by the Keth Medical Republic, a society dedicated to healing and knowledge. The former warrior race had become the galaxy's most skilled surgeons and medical researchers, their natural precision and discipline perfectly suited to the demands of medicine. The attack on the Mercy's Light had been intended to demonstrate human weakness. Instead, it had revealed human strength in its purest form. The galaxy had learned that humans were indeed Deathworlders, but their deadly power served life, not death. They were the guardians of the innocent, the protectors of the weak, and the enemies of those who would harm the defenseless. And in the vast medical centers that now dotted the galaxy, in the white-hulled ships that brought hope to the desperate, in the skilled hands that preserved life against all odds, the spirit of the Mercy's Light lived on. Never again would anyone attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. The galaxy had learned that lesson well, and the price of that knowledge was carved in stone, recorded in law, and remembered in the hearts of all who valued life above conquest. The humans had shown them all what it truly meant to be civilized.